Welcome to the 5th Annual Recovery Advocacy Day. I don't know how many of you know this, but this was a vision 5 years ago by actually someone who worked for me at the time, Miss Ashley Potts over here, wave your hand. She had a vision that we wanted people to know and understand that people can and do recover, and that recovery is strong in Pennsylvania. And so from there, we had a small group our first year, and here we are 5 years later, and look at everyone that's here. So let's give ourselves a round of applause. I want to give opportunity to our speakers today. First up, we have John Fabizeski. Many of you know him as Johnny Fab. Yeah. And I'm just going to let Johnny Fab tell us his story.
Yeah, Johnny boy.
Thank you. Thank you for that introduction. I think it was Devin that gave me that nickname about 5 years ago. So I'm honored to have it. But what a great day, right? Woo! What a great day to tell the world we got well. Pennsylvania, guess what? I got well. I got well. We do recover. My name is John Fabizeski, and I'm a person in long-term recovery. And what that means to me and my family is that my substance use condition has been in remission, and I have not used drugs or alcohol since January 26, 2014. Thank you. Today, I'm grateful to have opened my eyes to the life that recovery has provided me. I'm grateful for this opportunity to stand here before you as a face and voice of recovery in Pennsylvania. On January 26, 2014, my illness had taken just about everything away from me. The only thing left to take was my life. I no longer wanted to feel this breath in my lungs. I woke in a jail cell, having little to no recollection of what had happened the night before, and in the days following, I had a moment of clarity, what I like to call my gift of desperation. In being provided that gift, I have applied myself first and foremost to be a husband to my wife for more than 20 years. Of all the things recovery has provided me, the greatest gift is given that she no longer has to worry about me, and I have provided her peace of mind and became the man she always knew I could be. She stood with me when I could not stand by myself. Please give her and all the other family members here today a round of applause. Families recover. Families recover. I think she's going to have words with me after that, so I apologize now, dear, on camera. Thank you. Today I'm able to be a husband, I'm able to be a father to my 4 children and to be present in their lives. I'm a grandfather to 3 and about to be 4 grandchildren, and none of those grandchildren have seen me under the influence. None. Thank you. Recovery has provided me the opportunity to become a certified recovery specialist and the director of the first recovery support center in Northeast Pennsylvania and Susquehanna County. During this time, I attended Luzerne County Community College to further my education, and earlier this year obtained my associate's degree in applied science, and I now work as a counselor for Banyan Clearbrook Treatment Centers. A few weeks ago, I was proud to have the opportunity to speak at Luzerne County Community College about the announcement of their collaboration with the All One Foundation and the largest grant they had ever received at that college for a recovery support center on campus. Education and recovery. Education and recovery. Recovery has continued to provide me with opportunities that I found a passion in educating others. I work as a trainer with the Pennsylvania Recovery Organizations Alliance of CRSs across the Northeast. A few years ago, in talking to my son Dylan about losing his classmates to what the papers will say passed away suddenly. Passed away suddenly at 18 and 19 years old. We decided to start a chapter of Young People in Recovery in Wyoming County to assist making our community more recovery ready. Since that time, we've expanded that chapter to Young People in Recovery Northeast Pennsylvania. And we've assisted hundreds of individuals and families. And in 2018, I was honored to accept YPR's National Advocate of the Year. I have traveled this country from Las Vegas to Florida to Washington, D.C., Connecticut, Rhode Island to become better educated on how we can assist communities here in Pennsylvania. All of my accomplishments are not because of the I, they're because of the we. I am not a miracle. I am not a miracle. I am the product of publicly funded treatment. Without it, without community support, without treatment courts, without family support, without opportunities in education, I would still be sitting in a prison cell or worse. We use the language and we talk about having gold standards, and we look for the one solution that will make the difference. However, this thinking is askew. The Substance Use and Mental Health Service Administration says that recovery is a process of change through which individuals improve their health and wellness, live a self-directed life, and strive to reach their full potential. Then we must further a system that supports that definition. SAMHSA's definition is multifaceted and cannot be achieved with just one thing. Recovery is a process. It's a process. We must continue using the we. It takes a village and a collaborative approach. When we work together, recovery is probable. And we must include wraparound services. We must include wraparound services. We must continue to work together to impact true change. Here today, we make that commitment to becoming mobilized as a constituency of consequence and let our Pennsylvania elected officials know we got well. We got well. Again, none of this is about the I, it's about the we. We must continue to support and expand treatment court programs and prevention programs, recovery support services, harm reduction, and family programs. In the words of Gene DiGirolamo, spoken here in this rotunda 4 years ago, we must hold their feet to the fire. To the state of Pennsylvania, from the recovery community, we say thank you. We are grateful for your courage and support and all you do for the families and individuals impacted by this most pressing of issues that has decimated our communities. In a time of great need, communities that are impacted by an illness require all resources that their local, state, and federal government can provide. An illness is attacking our children, is attacking our neighbors, and our citizens are dying. We ask you to continue to have the courage to change and to work as a we the people and not an I the person. If you're in recovery, your voice matters. Sharing your story and stepping from the shadows provides hope and living proof that recovery is probable and recovery works. Tell others, tell Pennsylvania you got well. In the words of Howard Hughes, if you want to sit in the meetings and get up and say I'm a happy recovering alcoholic, you go right ahead. I want to do more. Get out there on the battlefield. Now I know today I'm preaching to the choir, but if the choir won't sing the praises of God, then who will? Finally, I would like to say thank you to everyone involved with making this day possible and for the opportunity to speak to you all. Alone we can, but together we can do so much more. Thank you and God bless.
Thank you. That got us started off really well. We're going to switch things up a little bit. At this time, we have Representative Thomas Mert. Representative has, for the past 5 years, provided a House resolution for Recovery Advocacy Day.
Thank you very much. I have to get back to the floor, so I promise not to be too long. The prior speaker was so eloquent in reminding us that we can do this, that we have proven techniques and policies that will make recovery a reality for so many of our brothers and sisters across the Commonwealth that have struggled with addictions. So how do we do it? First of all, we have to admit that we cannot arrest our way out of the opioid crisis. While I'm talking about the criminal justice system, we have to reform the criminal justice system and change it to prioritize treatment and recovery. If you are struggling with an addiction, being in prison, being incarcerated is one of the worst places to be. If you are not going to get the treatment and the health care that you need on the inside. And you know what? That doesn't go just for addictions. It also goes for our brothers and sisters struggling with mental illness. If you're on the inside, don't count on getting the health care and the therapy and the counseling that you need to be well. One other thing while we're talking about the criminal justice system, and I've spoken to the Attorney General about this. If you're a drug dealer and your distribution results in somebody dying on the sidewalk, we need to arrest and charge those drug dealers with that death. That's coming right from the Attorney General. We also have to make sure that all of our emergency responders have Narcan so they can save a life. In addition to that, we have to make sure that the pharmaceutical companies play a role in cleaning up the mess that they helped to create. We're not blaming them for it, but they have a role in this. And most of all, and most importantly, if somebody wants to make significant impact on this public health and safety crisis, we have to treat addiction as a disease. Critically important. Why is this important? Because federal law of the land says that mental health and addictions parity is the law, that we're supposed to be taking care of someone who has the disease of addiction. We're supposed to be taking care of someone who's struggling with post-traumatic stress disorder, bipolar disorder, depression. We're supposed to be taking care of them in the same magnitude as we would if they had a broken leg or diabetes. That's the law of the land. Unfortunately, the way that mental health and addictions parity plays out, not just in Pennsylvania, but in many other states, is deplorable. I want to say one final thing. I have legislation that's before the Insurance Committee, House Bill 1496, that improves mental health parity in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. I've spoken to Chairwoman Tina Pickett. She's very excited about this bill. We're working on an amendment to clean up the bill, and we hope to get it through the House of Representatives sometime this fall. Thank you very much. God bless you. Keep up the great work.
As many of you can tell just by being in the Capitol today, it's very, very busy, both in the House and the Senate and with all the activities. So we are going to keep moving through our legislators, and we have Representative Jim Gregory.
All right, whose cup of gratitude is overflowing today? My cup of gratitude is overflowing that I am here with you today as a person in long-term recovery. I am the face of recovery in the state legislature, and I am proud to be here with the faces of recovery in Pennsylvania. At some point, we all decide that we're not going to live in shame, we're not going to live in guilt, and we're not going to live in embarrassment anymore. That's where we're at our bottom. We decide we're not going to do that anymore. We're going to change, or we're going to make something of ourselves. I'm trying to make something of myself as a state representative, one day at a time. I can't do this, though, without experience, strength, and hope. So let's hear it for your experience. Please? Let's hear it for your strength. And let's hear it for your hope. I'm not successful in recovery without those three things. I'm not successful as a state legislator without those three things. By the grace of God, those things have been given to me. My past is my greatest gift. I use it every day. Your past is your greatest gift, the people in recovery. So I leave you just with this. Thank you for this opportunity to be able to come before you today to talk about how we're not going to live in shame, we're not going to live in guilt, and we're not going to live in embarrassment anymore, no matter what our profession is, no matter what our walk of life is. We can be proud to say that we have been blessed with the challenges that we faced before we went into recovery, because we use them today. I use them every day as a legislator to be able to talk about what recovery looks like. Not what a spreadsheet looks like, not what a policy looks like, but what a thinking problem looks like. Because that's what I have, and I'm blessed to have it. I'm blessed to be here with you today. Thank you for allowing me to speak, to be the face of recovery in the legislature, to be with these great faces of recovery, and to the faces of Pennsylvania who are in recovery. We need to be able to work together. God bless you all. Thank you very much.
Next, we are going to hear from Senator Camara Bartolotta. Today, she introduced a state resolution, a Senate resolution for Recovery Advocacy Day. Senator?
Hi, everybody. I love Cheryl. Isn't she awesome? Give it up for Cheryl and all you do. She's my constituent. Thanks for all those folks coming from Washington County and everywhere, and thank you for being here and being the face of this issue. And again, just as the wonderful representative just said, you know what? We are finally bringing these issues out of the shadows. The stigma is going away because we're so vocal about it, and because, unfortunately, every family seems to be touched in some way. It had to get to this tipping point that everybody knows someone, unless it's themselves who've been affected by addiction in some way. They've got a child, a parent, a coworker, a classmate. We hear it all too often. So it's about time we brushed away the darkness and started showing our true colors, purple today, that we care about these individuals. They matter. They mean something. Your lives mean something. And you would never, ever, ever take someone who has heart disease or diabetes and say, oh, it's your own damn fault. Never. We would never say that. This is an illness. And these people need treatment. And they don't need 28 days and kick them out. They need long-term recovery. We need insurance companies that step up and pay for long-term care. We need to address the dual diagnosis component of a lot of addiction issues. Many times there is a mental health issue associated with an addiction of some sort. And mind you, we don't call people addicts. We wouldn't address someone by their disease either. We don't call someone a heart attack, right? We don't call someone a diabetes, yeah. These are people in recovery. We also need to take a look, like I said, at the mental health issue. You know, too many people who have illnesses such as these end up behind bars. And as John was saying, you know what? It's not helping anybody. It costs the state an average of $45,000 every single year to incarcerate someone. Can you imagine what that money would do in recovery? It would keep people in their homes. It would keep people with their families. It would keep people in their communities. It would keep people in their jobs. The return on that investment is astronomical. And the souls of these individuals are worth millions and millions and millions. There's no price tag on recovery and the benefit it is to individuals, their families, their kids. So we really need to work at reform. And last, I'll leave you with this. I started the first ever Criminal Justice Reform Caucus in the Senate. I can't believe it's 2019 and nobody ever did this before. Together with our Senator Art Haywood, and now in the House, there's a companion caucus, Reforming Criminal Justice. Stop locking people up for everything. Let's get people the treatment, the care, and the respect that they so deserve. Thank you all for being here. Thank you, Sheriff, for inviting me to speak. Thank you all for being here, doing what you do. Thank you.
Finally, come on over. We have Representative Gene DiGirolamo, and he wasn't here earlier, but Johnny actually quoted you from when you spoke a couple years ago. There he is. So people are listening. So I give to you Representative DiGirolamo.
Thank you, everyone, and welcome. I first want to recognize and acknowledge someone who has worked up here in Harrisburg for 35 years, and most of that time spent working on issues dealing with human services and addiction, and she just retired. And that's my former executive director, Melanie Brown of the Human Services Committee. She is one of those people that probably most of you don't know, although some of you know. I know Bill Stauffer knows her very well. But I can assure you that she has worked tirelessly on your behalf, making sure that people have the opportunity to get into treatment, whether they have the money or the insurance to be able to do so. And she has worked on so many issues through the year, and most of the time, right, Melanie, we've been successful. Most of the time, not all of the time, but it's so good to see you. She just retired after 35 years, and so good to see you, Melanie. You look terrific. And I know there's a lot of recovery in the Capitol here today. I know it. I can just feel it. I was down at Penn's Landing on Saturday with Secretary Smith. We were both down there, and I don't know how many people they had down there, 10, 15, maybe 20,000 people walking. There's a number, 30,000 people who were walking and there supporting treatment and recovery. And I'll tell you what, it is so inspiring. And I want to thank those of you that are here today that work in the field of recovery. Thank you for your good work. I know how hard you work and how much you care about making sure people have the opportunity to get into treatment. And for those people that are here today in recovery, does treatment work? Does treatment work? And it absolutely works. And I say this all the time, and I'm going to continue to say it, that addiction is a disease that is left untreated is always fatal. And that recovery works if you get the proper treatment for the proper length of stay. It is highly successful. And we all know the statistics and how bad this disease is. call it what you want, epidemic, a crisis. It is all of those things. It's getting a little bit better. And I think most of that is because of the Narcan. The Narcan is doing a tremendous job of saving people's lives, and that's so important. And I don't care if you have to use Narcan and save a person's life once, twice, 3 times, 10 times, it's worth it, because they're never going to have the opportunity to get into treatment if you don't save their lives. So let's continue to work together. I mean, we used to say addiction affects 1 in 4 families, 1 in 3. I think it's 1 in 2. It might be almost every family that has a loved one or a family member or a friend that they know that has an addiction. And the one thing that gives me a little bit of hope is that we're starting to hold these drug companies accountable for the disaster that they created, not only here in Pennsylvania, but across this country. And you look at some of the states and the verdicts, and they're starting to make payments. There are civil suits out there. There are now starting to be criminal suits. And I think some of these people, these executives and these board of directors, ought to be taken out in handcuffs and put in jail for the mess that they created around this country. And it's starting to happen, and it's going to happen, and we're going to hold them accountable and make sure they pay and be able to put people into treatment who need to get into the treatment, because it's so important. So let's work together. God bless you, and good to be with you today. Thank you.
Okay, now I think maybe we can just take a breath. Now that we've gotten all the legislators where they need to go, I do want to say that we have grown over the past 5 years as far as attendance goes, and any event has people working in the background. And this past year, we had 15 people sitting on the planning committee. And if you're in this auditorium or in this rotunda, will you stand up if you were on this committee? And let's give them a round of applause. What happened to Ashley? Okay. So along with Ashley, Mike is sitting here. Ashley stepped out. Mike, will you stand up again? Mike Krafik has been instrumental, along with Ashley, in really organizing us and helping us understand what this event needs to be. So thank you. Next, we have another person in long-term recovery. Her name is Samantha Osterloff. Samantha, do you want to come to the podium? And I present her to you.
You did a great job with the name pronunciation. Perfect. My name is Samantha Osterloff, and I am a person in sustained long-term recovery. And what that means for me is that I have not had to pick up a drink or a drug since December 21st of 2011. Thank you. And I do want to second what John Fab had said, and I do want to take a second to give a round of applause to what I call my village. My people that are standing side by side with me in long-term recovery, my parents, my brother, my sister, my niece, my nephews, all these beautiful people in my life, my educators, my mentors, my supporters, and that village that continue to support me, because without them I wouldn't be here today. So let's give a round of applause to all those people that are in my village and the village of everybody here behind me. And what I really want to say today is that on December 21st of 2011, a police officer gave me and my family the best Christmas gift we could have ever gotten. And what he said to me and my family is he said, "Merry Christmas, Samantha. You can go to treatment and not jail." And I really want to put that out there because the longer I stay in long-term recovery, the more I think back to what are the circumstances that came together to get me where I am today. Standing in the Capitol building, which about 8 years ago, I'm not sure I would have made it through the front doors and the security. You know, so what things came together for me that I call my perfect storm? Well, I'll tell you what came together, and it started, and I call it the ripple effect. And that's really what I want every single one of you to take with you today, is what I call the ripple effect of my recovery. Not the ripple effect of my addiction, because the ripple effect of my substance use disorder obviously spread out pretty far. It touched far more lives than mine. But here's the thing that I know standing here today. The ripple effect of my recovery knocks that ripple effect of my active use completely out of the water, no pun intended. Because what I do in my recovery today, and that long-term recovery and those supports that I continue to have, touches thousands. I'm going to go ahead and say that in this room today, all of us and what we've been able to do, whether it be being a person in long-term recovery, being a family member of someone in long-term recovery, being a legislator, being someone who works in the treatment field, just being grandma, being mom or dad, has touched billions of lives and continue to save endless amounts of people. And for me, that's one of my greatest gifts. Because standing here today, I can tell you that I'm grateful. I'm a person of privilege, and I'll tell you why that is. Because when that police officer said, "Merry Christmas, you can go to treatment and not jail," I had access to resources. I had access to resources that weren't gonna cut me off after a week of treatment and detox. I had access to resources that were gonna continue to follow me and cover me through every level of care into long-term treatment, from detox, rehab, PHP, IOP, GOP, and continued to support me. I had the support of a probation department who was going to continue to hold me accountable. I had support of my family members who, through God's grace, got well long before I did and continued to carry me through recovery. Because that's one thing we forget about today too, right? We forget about that family. We forget about that family who has no idea what to do. They're scared to death. What do? Where do they get resources? Where can they go see someone that's going to say, it's okay? You know, I always tell my father and my mother, thank God for you. Because in the end, you didn't know if everything you were doing was right, but everything you did worked out okay. And my father said to me one time, there's no handbook, Samantha. There's no handbook that says your precious baby girl who used to be a varsity cheerleader, an honor roll student, a college student, a great person, held close to her moral compass, is an IV drug user, is on life support from blowing her heart valves as a result of continued IV drug use. Go ahead, mom and dad, turn to page 6, and it's going to tell you exactly what to do. They didn't have that. You know, and so that's what I really try to support today, that I am not the stigma of substance use disorder, that I am a person in long-term recovery that has been sustaining that long-term recovery one day at a time through the use of continued supports in a village. And I continue to stay away from the use of drugs and alcohol. And that as a result of my long-term recovery and those supports in my village and my cheerleaders and treatment and advocates and mentors, I have a bachelor's degree in criminal justice. I have a master's degree into criminal justice with an emphasis in behavior management. I get to teach. I'm an adjunct faculty member. Can you believe that? I get to do contracted trainings and work with people to break the stigma. Work with people to say everybody needs to have Narcan. I don't care if you work in the gas station. I don't care if you're on the front lines fighting this disease with me. Everybody needs to have Narcan. Everybody needs to know about harm reduction. Everybody needs to know about needle exchanges. Everybody needs to know about long-term treatment for this disease that we suffer from. Everybody. And I'll say that a couple years ago, I'm here today, and a big reason that I'm loud, I'm proud about my recovery, I'm obnoxious about it. You'll see me at a recovery day with my 8-year-old daughter with a Hero in the Fight shirt on, because I'm raising a generation of children that don't know what the stigma is. They know that addiction disease is a disease, and more importantly, mommy recovers, and so do her friends, and so do everybody in her life. And the thing that happened is about 2 or 3 years ago, I lost some people very close to me who helped raise me, who helped keep me alive during times when I wasn't all right. And those people lost their fight as a direct result of untreated substance use disorder. And I said to myself, I can do more, and I'm gonna do more. And no longer am I gonna hide and not talk about this disease, and more importantly, talk about treatment, and more importantly, talk about my recovery and what that can do. So I urge everybody here today, I thank you for your attendance. I thank you for your advocacy. I thank you for making the trip out and dealing with parking and the heat and everything going on in the state capitol today. And I urge you to think about your ripple effect when you leave here today. Something as easy as seeing somebody in the grocery store and smiling at them. Because guess what? I'm a representation of somebody in long-term sustained recovery. And when somebody meets me and somebody sees me and they see that I'm an upstanding member of this society and I'm giving back, guess what? They're gonna be more open to say, hey, my kid's got an issue. Hey, my husband's struggling. And I can say, how can I help? And so when you go out of here today, I want you to really carry that with you, that every single life we touch, every person that we get into recovery, that we get into treatment, has a long-lasting, further than we can even see, of a ripple effect of the people that they touch on a daily basis. And that's what I want you to keep in mind, that we can do this alone, it's not enjoyable, but stronger we're together. And the ripple effect and what we can do together is incredible. And so I always say this, and I leave everybody with this when I'm done sharing, and that's day by day, nothing changes, but when I look back, everything's different. We do recover.
Coming together like we are today is exactly what we just heard from Samantha. By sharing the struggles and the triumphs, we're stronger, and it actually saves lives because it encourages people to reach out for help, knowing that there is a life at the end of the tunnel and that there's hope and recovery. So thank you for everything that you shared, Samantha. I wanted to let you know that this was the first year that we did an artist event or a contest, and on the board over here where many of you signed, the winner of that competition of the logo design was Kim Medvid. She was unfortunately not able to be here today, but if you haven't signed the board, please do, and put your recovery anniversary date on there as well. At this time, I would like to introduce to you the Secretary of the Department of Drug and Alcohol Programs, Jen Smith, and she has been going all about the Commonwealth, I would say, this entire month of Recovery Month. So I give to you Jen Smith.
Oh, thank you. Boy, Samantha's a tough act to follow. So you hear this great story of a person in recovery, and then you get to hear from a boring state official. Isn't that great? So I'll keep my remarks fairly short because I'm not the most important person today. But I do have something that I think is really important to share. And my remarks today are really directed at individuals with substance use disorder and their families and friends. And so what I want to share with you today is I want you to know just how important people in recovery are to my department and to the state. And so I'm going to really quickly share with you the 4 goals of my department over the next 3 years. So those 4 goals are reduce stigma, pretty solid goal, right? Yeah. Intensify primary prevention, strengthen our treatment systems, and 4th, empower sustained recovery. That's how important you are to us. You made the top 4 goals of our department for the next 3 years. And underlying all 4 of those goals are really your faces and voices. Because everything we do in our department, every policy decision, every programmatic decision, all of our funding decisions come down to the faces and voices of individuals with substance use disorder and their families and friends. So this day is not about me, it's not about all the dollars we're getting from the federal government and how we're spending them all and what my strategic plan looks like. This day is about you. It's about your voices, and it's about your stories. And this year's National Recovery Month theme is Join the Voices for Recovery. Together we are stronger. And I want to reiterate how important that theme is. Join the Voices for Recovery. Your voices matter. They matter when it comes to making policy decisions. They matter when it comes to building your communities. And they matter when it comes to building a Pennsylvania that is happier and healthier for generations to come. So please, if you are battling substance use disorder, if you have a family member or a friend, speak up, share your story, because it does matter. The more voices we hear, the more we can chip away at that stigma. Folks, together we are absolutely stronger. Thank you so much for having me today.
Thank you, Secretary Smith. I don't know how many of you pre-registered for this event. Many of you did. But I wanted to let you know that there was a survey. Sorry, I can't find my numbers here. 27 people completed a questionnaire related to their number of years in recovery. And of those 27, only 27 completed. We have far more people here today. But in those 27 people, we had 291 years, 4 months, and 11 days of recovery. So that is just a very small sampling of what is represented here today in the Rotunda, but I wanted to give you that bit of information. We're now getting close to wrapping things up. I'm going to introduce our final speaker, which to many of you, he is your friend and you know him, Mr. Bill Stauffer. He's the Executive Director of the Pennsylvania Recovery Alliance, Pennsylvania Recovery Organization Alliance, which we know as Pro-A. I don't even know all those words in there. But he is going to wrap up our Recovery Advocacy Day, so I welcome you to the podium.
Good afternoon, everybody. How we doing? We got recovery in the state capitol today. My name is Bill Stauffer. I'm a person in long-term recovery. That means to me that I have not had to use a drink or drug since October 20th, 1986. I often refer to myself as a formerly young person still in recovery. I want to tell you a little bit about myself, and I was asked to talk about some of the things going on nationally. I was a 21-year-old young man who knew that he was going to die. I was going to die from addiction. I could see it, I could see the future, and I knew that it was going to happen to me. I barely graduated high school. I had no future. I had no hope. I didn't think that I had any place in this world. What my life looks like today is I run the Pennsylvania Recovery Organization Alliance, which has a 20-year history thanks to our Department of Drug and Alcohol that has supported our mission to educate the public about stigma, to provide advocacy for people in recovery and individuals who have addiction, and to provide training and support for workforce in our community. I am the person that runs that. We have 5,000 individual members across the state of Pennsylvania. We work all over the place. I have 89,000 miles on my 2017 year Prius, and I pretty much live in my car. I've also done things like testified in front of the United States Senate. I've helped organize the Human Service Committee things on adolescent care and the loss of adolescent care here in Pennsylvania. I've been able to do amazing things in recovery. The thing is that there's nothing really remarkable about me. Because the truth, as you've heard from the speakers here today, is that my story of recovery, the only thing remarkable about it is that it's unremarkable in the recovery community. That I teach I barely graduated from high school. I now also teach at a university. I'm able to do these things because when I was a 21-year-old young man, I was able to walk into publicly funded treatment and I got help. And I can't sit here or stand here in this building without thanking the people that made that possible. Because when I walked into treatment in 1986, there were people who fought like hell to make that possible. They were our friends. They were often individuals who were in recovery who couldn't talk about being in recovery back then because you couldn't do that. And they fought like hell. I'm mentioning this right now because everything that we have in Pennsylvania nationally is a result of the people that are standing behind me and the people in recovery who have made a system of care possible so that we could get help. In 1970, when I was 5 years old, treatment looked like nothing. There was no publicly funded treatment. People got lobotomies and electroshock therapy. 16 years later, I walked in and I got help. And I want to thank the people who worked behind these walls that made that happen. I also want to talk about where we need to go. And to talk about that, I also have to talk about some things that are going on now. Our department has made tremendous progress. Our administration has made tremendous progress. We're reducing stigma, we're improving access to care. We have a long way to go. For me to be here today, I want to tell you some stories about negative public perception and discrimination against our population. Because we can't change it unless we talk about it. These are things that I've run into in the last few months. I had an opportunity to talk to the drug czar of the United States about this in Arlington, Virginia a few months ago. Everybody knows that Narcan is publicly available, right? You can, there's a standing order for Narcan. You could go into a pharmacy and get Narcan thanks to the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania and Secretary Levin and other people who made that possible. Well, there are still problems. There are people who have done that and have been denied life insurance because they have purchased Narcan. I've talked to a mom who walked into a pharmacy and the pharmacy refused to honor that standing order without knowing the name of the drug addict for whom that prescription was for. That's unacceptable. We have to change that. There's no excuse. There's nothing in the standing order that requires you name the person that it's going to be used on. That has to change. I want to tell the story of a childhood friend of mine. He was a class valedictorian of the high school that I graduated from. He was an amazing young man. I watched him go from being an amazing young man to falling into the depths of addiction. The last time I saw him alive, he was in a hospital ER. He had called me up. He was filled with shame and remorse, and he asked for help. And I got there right at the time that this hospital was doing the evaluation. And the evaluation of care looked like this, because I stepped out of the room. It took about 30 seconds. The evaluation went, you could go, we might be able to get you help. We might be able to get you into treatment, but it will probably take a long time, or you could go home today. He went home. I never saw him alive again. To that hospital, he was a gomer. Get out of my ER. Now, we've made progress with this. I know through the help of this administration, we've made progress. We have a long way to go. A loved one, a family member of mine, was trying to get some help last night. Looked up online how to get to a 12-step meeting, called the number thinking that they would find out where they could go to a 12-step meeting. They got patient brokered. We're being preyed on. We need to change that. Why I mention that today is because we are the ones that are going to change that. Because the reality about recovery is that we are not something to be hidden in the dark. We are not people to be ashamed of. We are the very best members of your community. The reality is that when people get in recovery, the research is showing that we get better than well, that we do amazing things with our lives for pennies on the dollar in what it costs. There are 23 million Americans in long-term recovery. This is just a start. I want to talk briefly about what we've been talking about nationally. And one of the things is we need to make sure that people in recovery are sitting at tables and being involved in policy decisions all across America, because that's how we got care, and that is how we are going to fix and improve things with the help of administrations like this one and those around them around the country. We need to make sure that the voice of recovery is at every table. As they say, if you're not at the table, you're on the table. And unfortunately, we still have a lot of discrimination to change. We have fantastic friends with our Department of Drug and Alcohol and others like it across the country. But where do we need to head? The research is really clear here. You see, when I hit 5 years of recovery, 5 years, my chance of falling back into active drug use fell to 15%. That I had an 85% chance of staying in recovery for the rest of my life. The reality is, we've learned this, that if we provide people that kind of care, they get better. This is kind of like what happens when somebody goes in for cancer care. You know if that happens, if you get that terrible diagnosis of cancer, what you want is you're thinking about a time 5 years later where you're sitting there and they're saying, you know what, all your tests are clear, we've put all kinds of services, we've given you everything you needed. If something didn't work, yeah, we stuck by you, we gave you something else, and you got in 5 years of remission. The reality is we need to do that with addiction treatment and recovery support services. We have a long way to go. 9 in 10 Americans never see any kind of treatment at all, and only a fraction of people get the 90-day minimum dose of care that's effective, and almost no one gets recovery support services. How are we going to change things? I'll tell you what. When I walked into care in 1986 and I got what I needed, back in 1970 that looked impossible. It looked like lobotomies, jail, or electroshock therapy. People like the individuals in this room made it possible. So here's my challenge with our friends like the Department of Drug and Alcohol, who has helped us create a vision around a 5-year recovery model, and we've actually gone around the country and started talking about this, is let's move our system of care towards 5 years of recovery. So it doesn't matter what you look like, where you come from, what the color of your skin is, what gender you are, that everybody gets help. We get everybody a chance to get into recovery, and we never give up on you. We make sure that we get you into recovery, and that should be the thing that we focus on. When we focus all of our policies on how do we get people to long-term recovery, and we do those things, we're going to change America. And I ask you to help me with that. One final thing. One final thing, that there's a saying out there, and it's being said nationally, that recovery is possible. And it's amazing. We want to make sure that people know that recovery is possible, that people do get better. I don't think it's good enough, though. We need to move beyond recovery is possible, because the reality is you don't tell a cancer patient when they get diagnosed with cancer that you might recover. You tell them that we're going to stick with you and you will get better, because we're going to make sure that you get what you need. So we need a message. I need a message to go out to Pennsylvania, and I need your help with it today. The reality is that recovery is probable, that if we get the proper treatment and support services to individuals across this Commonwealth, that recovery is the probable outcome. So help me here. I know a lot of you, and I know you can be loud, so I'm asking you right now, this is a good time to be loud. I'm going to say, given the proper treatment and recovery support services, and I want you to say so loud that they hear it on the other side of the East Wing, recovery is the probable outcome. So, given the proper treatment and recovery support services, given the proper treatment and recovery support services, one more time and twice as loud, given the proper treatment and recovery support services. Thank you all very much.
We want to thank everyone for coming. I realized standing over there, I never introduced myself. And I am Cheryl Andrews. I am the Executive Director for Washington Drug and Alcohol Commission, but I serve as President of the Pennsylvania County Drug and Alcohol Administrators Association. So a lot of what we're talking about in the public funded client is the role of the single county authority in each of our counties across Pennsylvania, that there are services available to each of us within our respective counties. And so it was by default that I became your MC today. So feel free to take photos, hang out, meet with more legislators, but thank you so much for coming today.